What if one moment, one chance encounter, could change your view of love forever? For Nathan, it wasn't until a stranger's simple kindness shattered the walls he built around his heart that he realized what he'd been missing all along. Asterisk. Nathan walked into the cafe like he did every other morning, eyes down, trying to get his coffee without interacting with anyone. The barista greeted him with a smile, but he barely acknowledged her, just a quick nod in return. He liked the cafe. It was small and quiet, the perfect place to escape the hustle of his busy life. But what he loved most was the anonymity. Here, he didn't have to pretend. No one asked about his weekend plans or his love life, which he didn't have. Not anymore. Years ago, he had let someone in. Anna. She was everything he thought he needed: kind, compassionate, and full of life. They'd shared dreams, whispered secrets, and built a future together. But that future never came. One day, she left with no explanation. No goodbye. Just an empty space where love had once been. After that, Nathan couldn't bring himself to trust anyone. The walls around his heart grew taller and thicker, and every time someone tried to tear them down, he would retreat even further. He didn't have time for love. He didn't want it. It was a weakness he couldn't afford. The cafe was mostly empty, save for a couple sitting by the window, laughing softly as they shared a croissant. Nathan frowned and grabbed his coffee, his gaze drifting over the room before settling on a single empty chair in the corner. As he started to turn away, he saw her. She was sitting alone, her eyes fixed on a book in her hands. A quiet smile played at the corners of her lips as she read, and for a moment, Nathan just watched her. There was something so serene about her, so unlike the chaos he had grown accustomed to. She seemed at peace. The kind of peace Nathan had lost a long time ago. He didn't know why he was staring, but something about her made him feel uneasy. He turned his gaze away quickly and sat at the bar, trying to shake the strange feeling that had settled in his chest. But the feeling didn't go away. It lingered, gnawing at him like a memory he couldn't quite recall. Nathan told himself it was nothing, just a passing thought. But as he sipped his coffee, he couldn't help but steal glances at her from time to time. There was something about her, a warmth that seemed to pull him in. The door opened again, and a man rushed in, shivering from the cold. The woman looked up from her book, and her eyes met Nathan's for the briefest of moments. His heart skipped, and he quickly looked away, his cheeks burning. He wasn't one to make eye contact with strangers, especially not when they had that kind of effect on him. But then, to his surprise, she stood and walked toward him. His eyes followed her movements, his stomach tightening. She stopped in front of him, her smile genuine, soft. "Hi," she said, her voice light, but with an edge of hesitation. "I hope I'm not interrupting, but I think you dropped this." She held out a small piece of paper. Nathan blinked, confused, before realizing the paper was his. He had been absent-mindedly doodling on a napkin earlier, a habit from when he used to write things down to clear his head. It had somehow fallen to the floor. He hadn't even noticed. "Oh, thanks," he said, reaching for it. His fingers brushed against hers, and an unexpected warmth spread through him. "I didn't mean to startle you," she added, taking a step back. "I just saw it and thought. Well, I thought you might need it." Nathan nodded, unsure of what to say. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Her dark brown hair framed her face, and there was something so open about her eyes. There was no hidden agenda, no walls like his. Just an invitation to something. He wasn't sure what. "No problem," he muttered, then added, "I didn't realize I dropped it. I guess I get lost in my thoughts sometimes." She smiled again, and for a moment, Nathan thought she might leave it at that. But she didn't. Instead, she took a step closer, her gaze steady on his. "Do you mind if I sit?" she asked, her voice a little quieter now. "I don't want to take up your space, but I just ... I hate being alone in here." Nathan's mind raced. He could have said no. He could have easily brushed her off, excused himself, and left the cafe. But something stopped him. He wasn't sure why, but he found himself nodding. "Sure, go ahead," he said, barely above a whisper. She smiled again, this time with more warmth, and slid into the chair across from him. For a moment, they sat in silence. Nathan couldn't explain it, but he felt strangely at ease. The tension he usually carried around with him seemed to melt away just a little. It was as if the world had slowed down for a brief moment, and in that moment, he wasn't the guarded, cynical man he had become. He was just ... human ... She didn't say anything for a while, and Nathan didn't feel the need to fill the silence either. There was something comfortable about it, something that made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as broken as he had convinced himself he was. The warmth she exuded made the air in the cafe feel less cold. And as the minutes ticked by, Nathan found himself wanting to say more, but then, just as quickly as she had appeared, she stood up, pulling Nathan from his thoughts. "Thanks for letting me sit with you," she said with a soft smile. "I'll let you get back to your day. Maybe I'll see you around again." Nathan nodded, unsure of what to say. She turned and left as quietly as she had come, leaving Nathan staring after her. He hadn't said much, but in that brief encounter, something inside him shifted. He hadn't believed in love, not for a long time. But that moment with her, so simple, so unexpected, left him questioning everything. The days after their brief interaction in the cafe felt like an eternity for Nathan. Every morning, as he walked the same path to the cafe, a quiet hope lingered in the back of his mind, though he quickly dismissed it. She had been a passing moment, just a stranger with a warm smile. There was no reason to expect anything more, and yet he found himself thinking about her, replaying their exchange over and over, wondering if she might show up again. It wasn't like him to let his guard down, but something about her had caught him off guard. The way she smiled at him, the softness in her voice, the kindness in her eyes, it was all so genuine, so unlike the walls he had spent years building around himself. It was a fleeting connection, but it had left an impression, and he couldn't shake it. The next few days, Nathan found himself returning to the cafe, more out of habit than expectation. He ordered his usual coffee, sat at his usual spot, and tried to focus on his work. But he couldn't concentrate. His eyes wandered, searching for her. And then, one afternoon, there she was. She walked in, a few steps behind the line of customers, her brown hair cascading over her shoulders. His heart skipped a beat, and he quickly turned his attention back to his laptop, pretending not to notice, but she noticed him. "Hey," she said, her voice light but warm. "It's you again." Nathan looked up, startled by how easily her smile seemed to disarm him. Yeah. Guess I'm a regular now," he said, forcing a grin. "I'm Emma," she replied, taking a step closer. "You don't mind if I sit here, do you?" Nathan hesitated for a moment, but then, almost instinctively, he found himself nodding. "No, of course not, please." He gestured toward the empty seat across from him. Emma sat down, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Nathan couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. It had been so long since he'd had a real conversation with someone outside of his work life, and the simple act of sitting across from her felt oddly foreign. He glanced at her, noticing how comfortable she seemed in her own skin, how effortlessly she made herself at home. "Busy day?" she asked, breaking the silence. Nathan shrugged. "Same old. Just trying to get through it." She smiled, and he could see the genuine curiosity in her eyes. "I get it. It's hard to find a balance sometimes. But it's also okay to just ... Take a break. He blinked, surprised by how something so simple could resonate with him. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them, like she truly meant them. Nathan leaned back in his chair, letting the words sink in. It had been so long since he allowed himself to take a step back, to just breathe and enjoy the moment. He had been so focused on moving forward, on working and staying busy, that he'd forgotten how to live in the now. Yeah, he said softly, his eyes meeting hers. Maybe you're right. They sat in silence for a while, not uncomfortable, just present. There was something peaceful about the quiet. Nathan wasn't used to it. He had always filled the silence with distractions, his work, his phone, anything to keep his mind busy. But with her, it was different. The silence didn't feel like an absence. It felt like a shared space, a moment of mutual understanding. Eventually, Emma spoke again. You're a writer, right? I saw your notes earlier. She pointed to the napkin with his scribbled thoughts on it. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but they looked interesting. Nathan chuckled, a little embarrassed. Yeah, it's just some random thoughts. I tend to write things down when my mind gets too crowded. She smiled knowingly. I do that too. It helps clear my head. There was something about her, something that made him feel like he wasn't the only one who struggled with keeping his thoughts in check. Maybe it was the way she seemed so comfortable with herself, or maybe it was just the fact that she didn't try to force anything. Whatever it was, Nathan felt a pull toward her, a desire to share more. He found himself opening up in a way he hadn't done in years. I don't really let people in much. I guess I've gotten used to being alone, he admitted, his voice quieter now. After a while, you start to believe it's easier that way. Emma didn't look surprised. Instead, she nodded, her eyes gentle. I get that. Life can be hard, and sometimes it feels safer to shut everyone out. She paused, her gaze lingering on him. But it doesn't have to be that way. People aren't all bad, Nathan. Sometimes the best things come when we least expect them. Nathan felt a pang in his chest. He wasn't used to hearing those words, not from anyone who truly understood. He wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that what she said was true, but the fear of getting hurt again weighed heavily on him. He'd been down that road before, and it hadn't ended well. But with Emma, something felt different. The more he listened, the more he realized how much he'd been missing in his own life. It wasn't about grand gestures or sweeping romances. It was about the little moments, the small connections, and the simple act of being present with someone else. Before Nathan could respond, Emma stood up, glancing at the door. I should get going, she said. But it was nice talking to you. He didn't want her to leave, but he didn't know how to ask her to stay. Instead, he just nodded. Yeah, it was nice. Maybe I'll see you again. Emma smiled, her eyes warm. I'm sure you will. As she walked out of the cafe, Nathan sat there for a while, lost in thought. He had let his walls down just a little, and already he could feel something shifting inside him. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like there might be hope for something more. Nathan's daily. Visits to the cafe became more than just a routine. They became something he looked forward to. Emma was always there, a constant in his otherwise predictable life. At first, their interactions were small casual greetings, a shared smile, and a brief chat about nothing in particular. But as the days passed, the conversations began to grow, deepening in ways Nathan hadn't expected. They spoke about everything: books, movies, life in the city, their dreams, and their fears. Emma wasn't afraid to be vulnerable with him, sharing pieces of her life he hadn't anticipated. She talked about her childhood, her struggles with self-doubt, and how she had learned to find peace in the quiet moments. She wasn't perfect, and neither was he, but for the first time in years, Nathan felt like he wasn't alone in his imperfections. One afternoon, Emma showed up earlier than usual, her usual smile replaced by a look of exhaustion. She ordered her coffee and sat down across from him, her hands wrapped tightly around the cup, as if trying to hold herself together. Nathan immediately noticed the change in her demeanor. She wasn't her usual light-hearted self. "Is everything okay?" Nathan asked, unable to keep the concern out of his voice. Emma hesitated, then let out a slow breath. "It's just a lot right now," she admitted. "I've been dealing with some stuff at work, and I'm just tired." Nathan leaned forward, his instinct to listen kicking in. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to," he said quietly. "But I'm here if you need to." She met his gaze, her eyes soft. "It's just, I've been trying to keep everything together for so long, but sometimes I feel like I'm falling apart." She paused, and Nathan could see the vulnerability in her eyes. "I don't know how to handle it anymore. Everything feels so overwhelming." Nathan felt a pang in his chest. He had heard those words before, had felt them himself in the quiet moments when no one was around to see. He didn't want to push her, but a part of him couldn't help but wonder what had made her feel so broken. "I get it," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I've been there, feeling like everything's just too much, like there's no way out." Emma nodded, her eyes filling with unshed tears. "I've always been so careful, so cautious. I've kept myself guarded because I thought it was easier that way. But now it feels like I've just locked myself in this little box and I can't get out." For a moment, the weight of her words hung between them. Nathan understood what she meant all too well. The walls he had built around himself had kept him safe, or so he thought. But they had also kept him from feeling anything, from connecting with others, from experiencing life in its fullest. "I used to be like that," Nathan confessed, his voice quieter than usual. "I thought keeping people out was the only way to protect myself. But it doesn't work, does it?" Emma looked at him, her gaze steady. "No, it doesn't. At least not in the way we think it does." Nathan didn't know what to say next. The silence stretched on, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt real. They were both broken in different ways, but in that moment, they weren't hiding from each other. They were just two people, sharing the weight of their own struggles. "I've been pushing people away for so long," Nathan admitted. "I didn't think I needed anyone, but now, I don't know. I'm not so sure." Emma's eyes softened. "It's okay to need people, Nathan. It's okay to let them in." Nathan didn't know how to respond. The words were simple, but they hit him harder than he expected. He had always believed that needing someone made him weak, that relying on others was a form of failure. But Emma's words made him question everything. As the conversation continued, something inside Nathan shifted. He wasn't entirely sure what it was, but the walls around his heart, which had been impenetrable for so long, seemed to soften. Slowly, he began to see the world outside of his own pain, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to carry it all alone. Later that week, they met again, this time with more ease between them. They sat across from each other, not talking about work or their past, but simply enjoying the quiet companionship of each other's presence. It was in these moments of silence that Nathan realized how much he had been missing, how much he had been missing, how much he had been denying himself. He wasn't ready to admit everything to her yet. Not entirely. There were still pieces of himself he wasn't sure he was ready to share. But for the first time in a long time, Nathan didn't feel the need to be perfect. He didn't have to hide behind his pain or his cynicism. With Emma, he could just be, and so they continued to meet day after day, slowly and surely breaking down the walls they had each built around their hearts. Emma, who had taught him that it was okay to be vulnerable, and Nathan, who had taught her that it was okay to ask for help. In the small, Quiet cafe, amid cups of coffee and fleeting conversations, they were both learning what it meant to be seen, to be known, and to finally open up to the possibility of love. Nathan didn't expect it, but life had a way of throwing curveballs when he least anticipated them. The days after his honest conversation with Emma felt different, as though the world itself had shifted slightly. There was a weightlessness in the air, a sense of quiet optimism he hadn't felt in years. The walls that had once protected him from the world now seemed like a burden he was slowly shedding piece by piece. It was as if the simple act of letting someone in letting Emma in had opened a door to something he never thought he could have again, hope. But as much as he allowed himself to feel something, the past wasn't finished with him. One afternoon, as he was heading to the cafe, his phone buzzed with a message that stopped him in his tracks. It was from his ex-girlfriend, Anna, the one who had shattered his belief in love years ago. He hadn't heard from her in months. The message was short, almost too casual. "Can we talk? I've been thinking a lot about us." Nathan stared at the screen, a wave of dread washing over him. His heart began to race. He hadn't heard her name in so long, and yet here it was, like a ghost from his past resurfacing when he was finally starting to move forward. For a moment, he considered ignoring it. He didn't owe her anything. She had left him without a word, without an explanation. But deep down, Nathan knew this wasn't something he could run from forever. He took a deep breath and typed back, "Okay, we can talk." "When?" The reply came quickly. "How about now?" "I'm just around the corner." Nathan's pulse quickened. He hesitated, but then decided. He couldn't hide from the past anymore, not when it had been haunting him for so long. He set his phone down and walked out the door, his feet heavy with the weight of uncertainty. Emma was waiting for him at the cafe, but he needed to take care of this first. It was something he had to face alone. When he arrived at the cafe, Anna was sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup. She hadn't changed much. Her blonde hair was still the same shade, her eyes still that sharp, familiar green. But everything about her seemed distant now, like a faded memory of a life that once felt real. Nathan stood in front of her for a moment, unsure of how to proceed. After all this time, how could they possibly start over? How could he look at her and pretend like the years of silence, the hurt, the abandonment didn't matter? "Hi," Anna said quietly, her voice almost tentative. "I know this is unexpected." Nathan nodded but didn't sit. He needed to keep his distance. "Yeah, it is. You've had plenty of time to explain." "Why now?" She sighed, looking down at her coffee. "I don't know. I was scared. Scared of the things I couldn't understand. And when I left, I thought I was doing the right thing. But the truth is, I've spent all this time regretting it." Nathan's heart twisted in his chest. The words she said weren't new. He had heard similar ones before, but they never came with the closure he needed. He had spent years convincing himself that he didn't need her, that he didn't need anyone. But now, sitting across from her, hearing the familiar regret in her voice, it felt like a part of him was being torn open again. "I don't need you to apologize," Nathan said, his voice low but firm. "I don't need you to explain. The truth is, you left, and I've spent so much time trying to put the pieces of myself back together that I don't think I can go back." Anna looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. "Nathan, I know I don't deserve another chance, but I just wanted you to know that I've changed. I've spent these months trying to figure out who I am and what I want, and I've realized that I made the biggest mistake of my life walking away from you." Nathan swallowed hard, his chest tight. He could feel the weight of everything she was saying, but something inside him was different now. He wasn't the same person he had been when she left him. He had learned that love wasn't just about holding on. Sometimes it was about letting go. He stood up, his heart still heavy, but his resolve clear. You were a part of my life, a big part, but we're not the same people we were. I'm not the same person, and I'm not going to pretend like I can forget what happened. I can't go back to that. I've moved on. Anna's face crumbled, and for a moment, Nathan felt a pang of sympathy. But it was fleeting. He had done the hard work of moving forward, and he wasn't going to let the past drag him back into the darkness. I think it's time for both of us to move on. Anna, he said softly. She nodded, wiping away a tear. I understand. I'm sorry. Nathan turned and walked out of the cafe, feeling a strange mixture of relief and sadness. The past was behind him now, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this chapter wasn't over yet. There was someone else waiting for him, someone who had shown him that love wasn't something to be feared, someone who had helped him heal, even without knowing the full extent of his pain. When Nathan arrived back at the cafe, Emma was sitting at the table they always shared. She looked up when he walked in, her face brightening instantly. Hey, she said, her voice warm. How did it go? Nathan sat down across from her, his hands trembling slightly. He didn't know how to explain everything that had just happened. The weight of it all still lingered, but it didn't feel as heavy anymore. He looked at Emma, her eyes full of kindness and understanding, and felt something shift within him. I let go of the past, Nathan said quietly, the words feeling both foreign and freeing. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can move forward. Emma reached across the table and took his hand, her touch gentle but firm. I'm proud of you, Nathan. For the first time in years, Nathan allowed himself to believe in something again, something real, something lasting. He wasn't sure what the future held, but in this moment, he knew that he didn't have to face it alone. Love wasn't perfect. It wasn't about waiting for the right moment or the right person. It was about showing up, about being open to the unexpected, and for the first time, Nathan was ready to embrace it. Asterisk, Nathan had spent years convincing himself that love was a fragile thing, something not worth chasing. But through his encounter with Emma, he learned that love wasn't something to be feared or avoided. It was something to be experienced, even if it meant facing the past. With Emma's support, Nathan found the strength to move on from the pain of his past and embrace the possibility of a future full of love. Not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. If you're ready to take a chance on love, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartwarming stories.